So I was sitting on my desk when it finally happened. A prompt on my phone showed up saying that the new iOS 14.5 update is ready. Do you want to install it now? I said yes. It installed. I opened it up again and nothing changed because that was supposed to be a revolutionary thing that I was looking forward to, and the thing never happened. So what is that thing? Let me give you a little bit of a background. So a few years ago, Apple has said that they have plans to introduce new measures in which to limit tracking of users, iPhone users. That would help promote their privacy and all of that Apple stuff. So they have done it in iOS 14.5 by introducing something that is called app tracking transparency. And that basically introduced a prompt called ask to track. So every time you open an app, it would ask you, do you want to be tracked? Yes or no? Fine, easy enough to understand. When I updated my phone and opened apps that you would associate tracking with, like Facebook, like WhatsApp, like Instagram, no prompt was given. So I was like, what is going on? So I looked at these brilliant articles. The first one is by Forbes, saying that, one, check your settings. So what you can do is you can go to settings, privacy, tracking, and then you would see a small prompt saying, allow apps to request to track. And if that's switched off, it means you're not being tracked by anyone by default. And if that's switched on, it means that every time you log into a new app or switch it on, it would tell you, do you want to be tracked or not? Fine. So now, what is this? What is this actually doing? So apparently, the reason that some people have it off and the reason some people have it on is if you did it before, this feature existed before this update. Before, what you needed to do is you need to manually look into your settings, go deep into the iPhone settings and look for don't track a toggle, and then you switch it off. And if you did that and you update it to iOS 14.5, the iPhone knows that you did that and it already switches that thing off. So what is the difference, you might say? Now, Apple has flipped the switch. So now, instead of having to turn it off and going through the settings, and maybe not everyone does that, now, the moment you open an app, by default, it does not track you. And if you want it to be tracked, then you would have to say yes. So that is what this thing is doing. Of course, there are problems with this implementation. First is the ATT, the transparency policy that Apple is introducing for them to limit the ad tracking, are not the only way app developers can track. Okay, so let's give you an example on how this protocol is used before in order to track. Let's say you go and open a food delivery app, and 7 days in a month you order pizza. Then you go to Facebook and you see advertisements for Papa John's and Pizza Hut and local pizza places because they know that you're into pizzas. But you're saying, what is the link between an app that is for food delivery that is unrelated to Facebook and Facebook or Instagram? It's because they use this protocol to have basically a string of numbers that is attached to who you are, and they understand and they share these information between each other. And that's what Apple is now trying to block. And probably in most cases, they have successfully blocked. But that's not the only way they can track you. They can also track you by using your local behavioral patterns to see how you use your device. So let's say you are on Google Maps and Google Maps understand where you're going. So they can use that for YouTube and understand that this is somewhere that is close by to you and this is somewhere you frequently visit. So let's advertise, let's say, the local coffee shop there or something. Okay, so that's not something that Apple can easily limit. And problem number 2 is these other companies are actually trying to make a workaround that would able to make them change the way they can track, not using this IDFA, the identification for advertising. They would create their other thing that would be able to track you anyway. So the idea now is apparently this IDFA this blocking is actually working, and some other companies they want to find other ways to track you. First way is IP address, so they would always know where you are. And I mentioned they always can monitor what you do on their app. And the other thing is other companies like TikTok's parent company ByteDance is trying to create a substitute called CAID that is designed basically to reverse what Apple has done, and they would share that within Chinese apps to track people anyway. Snapchat also is trying to identify users based on network information, and tech groups like Adjust and AppsFlyer say that they can probably match who that person is with 90% accuracy. So is this update actually doing anything? So Apple has actually sent legal cease and desist letters to these Chinese companies for them to stop, and they're trying to combat this backlash over this update. So the Apple side of it is you have millions and millions of users who have no idea how much they're being tracked, and this update is only going to let them know. That enforces the idea that for customers, we don't want anyone to track us and profit off data that they sell and that is ours. So these advertisement-driven companies should either change or basically they die off. The other side is, okay, now if you do that, if you limit tracking, you will still get advertised too, but you will just get random advertisements about random products that you don't really care about. So is that better? According to some analysts, the idea is these advertising companies buy this data within hundreds of thousands of users. So they profile you to say someone who's into sports, someone who's into gaming, someone who's into music, someone who's into art. And then they would advertise based on these profiles. And one specific person, is not really that important to them. But here's the catch. According to Apple, these data things, these ways they can track you for advertisements, can also track you down to the individual. When the January insurrection happened in Washington, D.C., these technologies were used to identify who exactly were the people that were in the Capitol that day, who were identified easily using this just by analyzing what they posted on social media or tweets or metadata. And that's kind of scary if used in the wrong way, being able to track exactly who you are just based on your pattern from an outside entity. So the other side is, hold on, Apple, don't tell me you're doing this just for privacy. So now, at present, 84% of apps on the App Store are free. Okay? So that means that Apple gets nothing. They don't get money off these 84% of the apps because there's nothing. So how do these apps make money? Advertisements. So if Apple is able to stop advertisements, these apps might be forced to charge you money for their services. And if they do that, Apple gets a cut, 30% or 15% of any transaction. So people are saying, okay, Apple, you're not doing this for the privacy things. This will force people to charge money and then you will get a cut. And one final thing is, Apple, within their own apps on iPhone, kind of track you anyway. They understand which music you listen to if you're using Apple Music, which books you're reading if you're using their bookstore or Apple News, which news are you reading, which apps are you downloading, and they recommend things to you based on that. So that's tracking, isn't it? But the difference here, Apple says, is we don't share it with anyone else, we don't sell it to anyone else, but it's still tracking. So you see how this is a bit complex when you look at it from all sides. This is highlighted with games, like free games. Before, all games used to be paid for, and now they're all free because they use this. They use this for a way to make money, but without charging the customer directly. And that's the free-to-play model that is existing for a long time in mobile games. But the difference now is these games all sell your data to some entity. And if they're forced not to sell it, then they have to make you pay directly, the users pay. And that would mean more money to Apple. Such a confusing story. There's also the side of the encryption, the data. Everything sometimes happens in the cloud. So maybe you're not allowing them to share it using this specific method, but the data that goes to the cloud, how do you know what happens to that data? Maybe one specific company that releases all the games, say Epic, for example, who owns a lot of games, they might share their data with Facebook in the cloud without Apple ever seeing it. Apple users will not ever know because you don't have access to these server things. And one final thing is, if you limit these data sharing things, it will make actually the company with the biggest collection of data the strongest. What company is the biggest company with the biggest knowledge base about the user base without sharing with anyone? That is Google. So now you're giving Google so much power because they don't rely on this anymore. They just shrug it off. Okay, so we don't get these data. So what? We have Google Maps, we have YouTube, we have Google Search, we have everything basically. Everything is Google. We have Android. The whole platform is ours. So, ah. Okay, so enough about the rant about iOS 14.5. This is supposed to be, well, one final thing. It's supposed to change the way the industry works, and it might create a mess where you don't understand what is going on, whose benefit is this for? Is this really protecting us, or is it just an illusion that it will try to protect us as much as possible, but it doesn't really do anything? It's just a new thing that Apple can put when they're advertising the iPhones, or maybe they actually do limit. And if they do limit, does that do any good to customers or does it do any bad? I'll leave that to you. But for me, I didn't even know that I did not allow apps to track. I don't remember the last time I saw an ad and then I bought something off the ad directly. Maybe it influences me in thinking, oh, maybe I should get pizza that someday or something. But it's not directly an ad, so it doesn't really affect me, and I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions. Okay, because this video is about, I don't know, maybe 2 hours long now, I'll just add this final interesting bit. So TechRadar asked an expert to redesign Wikipedia, and this is what he came up with. Wikipedia has looked the same pretty much for years now, and when I saw this article, I was like, this is nice. How would Wikipedia look like if it was redesigned? And it looks amazing, really. So this designer looked at the homepage and he said, no one ever stays on the homepage. The homepage of Wikipedia is not something people are interested in, so let's change it. And I'll show you the pictures. These are the pictures of how the website looks like. And like, if this was Wikipedia, Wikipedia would have a different feel. Like, so one aspect is the home screen that he tackled, and the other aspect is how accessibility works. I don't like reading black text on white backgrounds. Sometimes I want to flip it. I want the background to be black and the text to be white, and maybe want it a different color, different size, or change the font. And it's not really easy to do in Wikipedia right now. So he imagined a world where the viewer looks amazing, everything looks so stunning. It looks like more of a newspapery look to it with some additional accessibility features. And it gave me the realization that Wikipedia is a website that is so frequently used, but so infrequently changed. It doesn't really change that much since 2005 or whenever this website was created. It always looks the same, and maybe a change is a good thing in terms of the web design. The new change would make us very more interested in using such a device for solving our homework or for general knowledge. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the discussion about the iOS 14.5 update, and I hope you have a fantastic week ahead. And Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem, and see you next week.